Living alone, especially as a woman, no longer has the stigma it used to, but you'll still often get those comments or those little looks when you share that you live alone. Those comments might shake you up a bit and cause you to start to think, maybe I should be signing up for an online dating site or several of them. Well, I've been divorced now for over 10 years, and as a consequence, I've lived alone for all of those years. So I've learned a few things about living alone, and I'm here to tell you it can be truly fabulous. Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Sharri Harmel, and I'm so happy that you have joined me to talk about all things related to designing and living a fabulous next chapter. My own big next chapter began in Paris, and I have a new book coming out at the end of this year where I share my 7-step framework so that you can design your own fabulous next chapter. Well, ladies, most of us end up living alone at some point in our lives. We're living longer, and as a result, the number of people who are living alone has increased significantly. It could be a death or a divorce, but it could also be a lifelong choice to live alone. And as more and more women opt out of marriage or remarriage, living alone can be an inevitable result. But even with the increasing number of people who are living alone, it often gets a bad rap. In my experience, living alone can be quite wonderful, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, some people hold tight to those cultural or societal norms of how lonely and even frightening it can be to live alone. And that's exactly why I'm going to talk about the benefits of living alone. And the first one, so obvious, you can do what you want to do when you want to do it. Call it freedom or independence. But when you live alone, you have the freedom to arrange your schedule however you like it. You can get up at 5 a.m. and watch the sunrise. You can stay up late, watch reruns of Blue Bloods, one of my favorite things to do, or spend your entire day working on a project that you have going. You can travel to the places that you want to go to and stay in hotels that you want to stay in. You buy the car you really want, or you decide that you're done with cars and you choose to take subways and Ubers. It's up to you. That's one of the biggest benefits of living alone. Cooking meals can also be an adventure. I sometimes wait to decide what I want to eat for dinner until late in the afternoon. Other times I plan out a meal that I want to cook because I want to try something new. I like to cook still. Other days, especially when I'm in Paris, I go out for a late lunch in place of a dinner. I might have a light soup or a salad for dinner, but it's all up to me. Now, the flip side to all this independence and freedom is that living alone also takes a good bit of self-discipline because you don't have someone who says, stop reading that book for an hour and go for a long walk. Sometimes it's easier to stay home than to leave your house and go somewhere. But I have to remind myself that what's easy, doesn't bring me joy. So, living alone means that you have to be a little more self-motivated, but the benefits of choosing how we spend our time surpasses any of the drawbacks of having to, plan out your own schedule, both the fun things as well as the things you need to be doing. The second benefit of living alone is that you get to decorate your home exactly as you want it to. I'm a bit of a decorating nut, as you can see from some of my prior videos. After my divorce, I purchased a little apartment in the Back Bay of Boston, and I turned it into just a jewel box. I had so much fun with that home, finding the drapery or the drapes that I loved. And frankly, I didn't have to worry about, is this too feminine or too whatever? I bought what I liked. I also brought chinoiserie into my apartment, from the fabric that lined the walls in the powder room, believe it or not, to the decorating on my elevator door. It was drop dead gorgeous, and I loved it. And for the first time since my single years in my 20s, I got to choose the look and feel of my home. And truly, I had so much fun doing it. I've moved a lot, so I've done up several more apartments. But besides the beauty that you get to choose, the look and the feel of your home, you also, another benefit is that you get to set up rooms in the home in ways that work for you and how you live. Most of my second bedrooms, when I have them, are an office or a study with a pull-out bed. In Paris, you've probably all seen the video that I did specifically on my Paris apartment. I live in a one-bedroom apartment in Paris that's pretty large, actually. So I have my desk in my bedroom and a sleeper sofa in the living room for that occasional guest. Now, I'm moving into a new apartment in Boston, and it's an old apartment in the Back Bay with the big old traditional dining room, believe it or not, with a fireplace. Well, I'm thinking, what use do I have with a big dining room? I'm thinking that room will end up being the most wonderful library and office. I can't wait. Why can't I wait? And this is one of the benefits. I don't have to ask anyone for their approval or kind of buy-in with my new idea. It's what I want. So when you live alone, you not only get to pick the style of the furniture and the furnishings of your homes, your spaces, but you can also use each room exactly how it works best for you and your lifestyle. Continuing on the home front, another benefit, and this is a very rather subtle benefit, but when you return to your home, it's exactly as you left it. For any of you who raised kids, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is a big one for me because I really didn't even realize how much I enjoyed this benefit until I stayed at my daughter's house. My daughter has 6 children, and when she leaves the house for even a short errand, nothing is the same when she returns. It's crazy. I wipe down the kitchen and it's like dirty 5 minutes later. Living alone, it is exactly how I left it when I go off and do my errands or I go on a trip. I've also realized, though, that I didn't really fall in love with my home until I was divorced and actually living alone. It was then that I really appreciated that my espresso maker was clean when I returned home from a trip. The washer was waiting for me. Everything I left in my fridge was still there. And my Whole Foods order, just shortly, I should say, arriving behind me because I do delivery. So in my prior life, when I left the house, whether it was for an extended trip or just a few hours, much would be different upon my return. Our family home was a big house. And in fact, my ex-husband still lives in the house. He wanted it. And every time I'm there, I breathe a sigh of relief that I don't have to be responsible to maintain that big house. Now, my apartment is small compared to that big house. And because I live alone, it is all exactly how I left it when I return. Number 4, when you live alone, and this is really big, and this takes, I think, a lot of people time to get accustomed to. But when you live alone, you quickly learn that you don't have to know how to do everything. Instead, you end up creating what I call a resource list. Now, my former husband wasn't the least bit handy. He did nothing around the house. I'll tell you a funny story. There was one time I asked him to put the salt in the water softener because my back was hurting. Those of you that know what I'm talking about know those salt bags are cumbersome and super heavy. So I heard him going down the basement steps because the water softener, this was in Minnesota, and the water softener was in the basement. And so I could hear him going down the steps. And then shortly thereafter, I heard him coming back up. And his question to me was, where is it and what does it look like? That gives you an idea of just how handy and engaged with the house my ex-husband was. not at all. So consequently, I learned how to do things. And I learned in the same, even though I was married and obviously not living solo, I learned that I had to have people to call if the problem was beyond my skill set. So when I started to live alone, and many of you might be afraid of this. You might have grown up with parents or with partners that knew how to do everything around the house, whether it's cleaning out a gutter or fixing a toilet. Don't panic because you can find people to help you. Just ask neighbors, ask friends, trusted people, people that take good care of their homes and probably have really good contacts. Might be people at the gym, whatever it is, just people know people, right? And we're all in this together. So create your resources list, and then you will no longer panic when something goes wrong in your house. Number 5, you will spend time with communities that you enjoy. Just because you live alone doesn't mean you're lonely or antisocial. I'm certainly not. But what is so wonderful about living alone is that you'll reach out and you'll find communities that fuel you, communities that interest you. It might be a church or a temple that you like, a gym that has classes that you enjoy with people that you enjoy interacting with during and maybe even after the class. Whatever it is you enjoy doing, and I mean from hiking to painting, you have the freedom to join communities that satisfy what you are interested in. One of my points in my next chapter manifesto, which is the last chapter in my book, is to stay curious. And you can't get all the information that your brain wants, that your psyche wants from information, that's in books or even on YouTube. We all go to YouTube to learn how to do things, right? But we need to go beyond that. You have to go out and explore communities of people who are doing things that you enjoy doing. So much of my married life, actually, like the community experiences were about attending events and gatherings that were my husband's interests. So there was not much time left for anything that I enjoyed. Those golf tournament dinners were excruciatingly boring. But now, as a person who has lived alone for a decade, I have so many groups of connections. They're all diverse, they're very different, but each is focused on one of my various interests, and new ones crop up every year. It's back to whether there are any hobbies that you want to try out in your next chapter, whether you live alone or not, which I talk about in my upcoming book. But if you do live alone, you have the freedom to pursue whatever wild and crazy hobby you want to try on. The people in these groups, remember, don't have to be your besties. And I like that. I have many different degrees of friendships, and I bet you do too. From all of the various interests that I've explored over, say, the last 10 years or so, that I've lived solo, but I keep adding to it. I keep growing. Some things I try out and I don't care for them, and you will find the same thing to be true. It's just an opportunity when you think about what is it I enjoy doing, and then to go and see, are there any communities where I could meet people who like to try out that same thing, whatever that might be, or attend certain kinds of events, whether it's the symphony or if it's a speaker series, a forum series, whatever it might be. It might be a knitting group, whatever, go out and find those communities to kind of support you as you try out something that interests you. On the topic of communities, though, living solo is on the rise. It really is. It's an increasing phenomenon. So you are not alone. And the more of us that are out there that are living solo, the more comfortable I think couples are becoming to include us in the dinners, the parties, whatever it might be. Not everyone has to be partnered up. As time goes on, I think we will create more and more communities. Look at the growth of pickleball that's pickleball is a perfect example. 10 years ago, I didn't hear, a few people played it, but I didn't hear it as being this craze that it is today. And last but not least on my list, when you live alone, is you are in charge of how you spend your money. You decide how much you allocate towards things that matter to you, whether it's travel, whether it's dining out, whether it's classes or lectures, gifts for kids and grandkids, how much and what specifically, charitable contributions. They are all your decision, and you get to allocate your money how you want to spend it. That was all a little scary to me in the beginning, but now I love it. I have to share, that fear around overspending as we age, and especially when we live solo. We don't usually have very many people to talk about it with. But one of the things that I found that really helps me is I actually have an Excel document that I create at the beginning of each year. And then on a monthly basis, I add my expenditures so that I keep track of what am I spending. And when I look at the entire year, I get to make a decision. Well, did I put my money where I wanted it to go? The joy, though, in being in complete control over your money is that you get to decide where you're going to spend those discretionary dollars that you have. Now, that list is just a start, but if you're suddenly solo and nervous about living alone, hopefully I've changed your perspective a little bit. I've truly loved living alone, and I enjoy my solo space so much. It has enhanced the way I live, and it's actually opened up doors to possibilities because I have the time and the energy to pursue what interests me. Now, serious relationship, I would love to have someone special in my life, but I'm not so sure that I'd want them to move in with me. So tell me what you think about solo living. If any of you have lived solo for a number of years, share your tips, because this is a community where we interact and we give our ideas and we give our feedback. And I'm on that note, I'm growing my YouTube channel, and to do so, I need you to help me by subscribing if you haven't already. Give me a thumbs up if you liked this conversation, and, check out some of the other videos. Wide cross-section of topics. I have this whole series called Come With Me, where I take walks to different places, different museums, different parks, different cities even. So I am committed to helping others create amazing next chapters. So do comment. I love, love, love hearing what you have to say. We all get loads of ideas from each other. So take care, everyone. A biento.